Oh, fuck, Kylo, yes, fuck. Your moans were muffled as your face was pressed into the warm skin of his chest, but you barely noticed as you lost yourself in the sensation of Kylo's quick fingers pulsing in and out. As your short fingernails tore through the tender, smooth skin of his back, you braced yourself and found your release against him, pulling him tightly towards you as you came. Okay, I do need to go now, Kylo whispered, kissing your forehead gently. No, don't leave, you mumbled for what had to be the 11th time that morning. Today was the day Kylo was leaving for a few days, and you really didn't want him to go. He could hardly blame you. The last time he had left you alone, Hux had locked you away in that cell. This time, though, he had left Phasma strict instructions to keep Hux away from you at all costs. It was even more dangerous for you now that Sadie had disappeared. Hux had rightly assumed Ren was behind it, and although he couldn't be closer to the truth, he didn't have the means to prove it. Still, there was always the concern that Hux would want to get even, and Kylo didn't want to take that chance. It's only a few days, Kylo repeated, as he had every other time. You cracked an eye open to look at him. Are you going to kill anybody? He tensed at the question, but you were quickly falling back asleep and paid it no mind. You don't need to tell me, but if you're fighting, just stay safe. I want you coming back to me in one piece. I promise, he said with a gentle smirk. Don't make promises you can't keep, you muttered, flopping over onto your back to find a more comfortable position in the pillows. He bent down to whisper in your ear, and you could feel his hair tickling your face as he did so. I promise, he repeated firmly. You felt him press his warm lips against yours, and then he was gone. Not that you cared. You were already fast asleep. You roll over that morning and try to immediately identify the cause for the tightness in your chest. Kylo was gone. Of course he was gone. He had that thing he had to do, whatever that thing was. It didn't matter. Kylo was brave and he was strong. He could handle himself for a few days off in the galaxy. The real question was, could you survive on a base alone with Hux? Kylo had freed Sadie, and Hux could probably figure out that he had been the one behind it. But did that mean he was going to take it out on you? Hopefully not. You quickly scampered to put some clothes on, picking them up from where they had been left on the floor from the previous night. It's a good thing you did, because just as you headed into the kitchen, there was a firm knock on the door. Come in, you call. You consider running back to get your staff, but you think better of it. Hux hadn't knocked when he came in before, and you doubted he would now. Instead, you let a smile crush your face as you see Captain Phasma walk through, still dressed in her familiar silver armor. She says your name, and it's only partially muffled as she removes her helmet. How are you faring? Good, you tell her, sitting up on one of the kitchen stools. How are you doing? She chuckles at your question, and you idly realize that although she is probably polite to Kylo and Hux, they probably didn't extend her the same courtesy. I'm fine. She looks you over. You seem to have recovered quite a bit from when I saw you last, outside that cell. Saw me last? You blink at her. You remembered passing out after Kylo told you to sleep, and you remembered him catching you as everything went blank, but you didn't recall seeing her there. You were in the medical unit for 2 days, Phasma explains. What? You ask, shaking your head. No, I woke up here. She laughs and shakes her head. You were in very bad shape. You were extremely dehydrated and needed a lot of fluids. When the doctor said that you had almost sufficiently recovered, Ren brought you back here where he felt he could keep a better eye on you. That's fair, you reply, rubbing your arm uncomfortably. It bothers you that you were out for 2 whole days and Kylo hadn't mentioned it at all. And then, when you had woken up, you had run around the apartment screaming about how you were going to kill him. You blush in embarrassment as you remember the entire ordeal. Hux is an ass. I'm sure he had his reasons, Phasma says lightly. You pause and wonder if she knows more than she's letting on. Ren had told you that she had been furious with Hux when she found out, but maybe they had come to some sort of an understanding? But if you're here, I'm guessing you're not going to let that happen again? You ask softly. No, you have nothing to fear from Hux, Phasma says. You know it's supposed to comfort you, but you can't help but think about Sadie and that insufferable collar around her neck. She catches the grimace on her face and tilts her head to the side. What's wrong? He could have killed me, you say, rubbing the skin on your arms up and down with your hands, if Kylo hadn't found me in time. But he did, Phasma says firmly. As soon as Ren and I arrived back on base, my men informed me that Hux had authorized Ren's prisoner to be transported to a cell as soon as we left. I've never seen that man move so fast in my life. You blush and scratch behind your head awkwardly. You knew that Ren cared about you, but of course, you were you. You didn't think he would act like he cared around anyone else, even given the special circumstances of your possibly impending death. Yeah, you murmur, embarrassed. Suddenly, you look up at her, struck with a sudden idea. By the way, do you have contact with Kylo? Or is he in part of a galaxy where there's no, subspace transceivers or anything? She tilts her head to the side and waits for your explanation before answering. Well, we talked about something this morning, and I wasn't sure if he had time to tell you before he left. Tell me what? Phasma asks. You can tell by the look on her face that she knows you're full of shit, but you try your luck anyway. Well, considering I'm here alone for a few days... You shrug, doing your best to appear nonchalant. Kylo just thought it would be better if I had someone to keep me company so I felt safer and so I didn't get too lonely. He said LN2829 could be relieved of his duties temporarily, just while he's gone, of course. You bite your lip and look up at her nervously. But he's one of your troops, so he said it was up to you. She narrows her eyes at you. Ren asked you to get my permission? She asks, and you quickly shake your head. I mean, no, you say quickly. Kylo Ren didn't ask. He ordered. No, of course he would never do that. Kylo ordered it, but that was me asking you if it was okay to, have LN2829 keep me company while Kylo's, gone. You bow your head and fidget under her intense gaze, scratching the skin off the back of your wrist. She seems to be enjoying your discomfort and chuckles with light humor as she puts her helmet back on. I'll consider your request. Thank you, you say, and she casts a simple nod in your direction as she turns and leaves. You wonder if Kylo told her to check up on you, or if she had simply taken the time to pay you a social visit when she knew he wasn't around. Maybe she thought you were lonely and could use the reassurance that Hux wasn't going to bother you again. That was definitely true. An hour later, one of the stormtroopers comes by to bring you food, and although you thank him politely, you're a little bit disappointed that it wasn't L82829. You weren't quite sure how you would know if it was him or not, since they all basically looked the same in their standard white armor, but you had a feeling you would just know. At first you thought that maybe it would be the Force at work, but no, the Force wouldn't provide you with that nostalgic feeling of familiarity that came with being around an old friend. You would have been lying if you had said that you weren't at least a little nervous. Sadie had assumed that LN2829 was Ladson, but then again, she had no idea. All you both knew was that he was a stormtrooper that had been giving Hux trouble. That didn't necessarily mean Ladson. Sure, the LN was a clue, but then again, if he was on board as a stormtrooper, they would have easily given him another set of initials. And if LN2829 really was Ladson, then what did that mean? How were you going to get him off the base when he probably had to attend a roll call or something? At least with Sadie, the number of people who knew she was still here was few and far between. But if Ladson went missing, he would definitely be noticed. Honestly, you were almost hoping you were wrong. If Ladson was being trained as a stormtrooper, then what did that mean? Was he being trained to fight in battle and use a blaster? You couldn't imagine why they would train a prisoner of war in combat unless they were heavily, heavily brainwashed. And if he was, did that mean LN2829 was just a serial number like the countless other stormtroopers you had interpreted for? True, some stormtroopers had more personality than others, especially that guard outside Sadie's door, but there were probably some people that actually wanted to be stormtroopers for whatever reason. Ladson, you knew for certain, did not. So what did they do to Ladson to make him compliant? Had they merely threatened and coerced him into being a stormtrooper, or had he been brainwashed, conditioned and reconditioned, like some sort of robot? You wouldn't know how to handle it if he was. The day passed quietly until that evening when there was another knock on your door. "Come in," you call from your spot on the couch. You don't look up from the book you are reading as the stormtrooper walks in and puts your plate of food on the counter. He stands there for a moment, watching you, as if waiting for an order or another command. But you're almost to the bottom of the page, and you hold up a finger as your eyes skim through the last paragraph before you glance up at him. "Thank you." He nods stiffly and continues to stand there, his expression concealed by his helmet. You say softly, putting the book down as you get to your feet. This was new. Usually they just put the food down and left. "Is there something else?" The stormtrooper in front of you doesn't say anything, and you can feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. His shoulders shake slightly, but he makes absolutely no sound, and the whole thing struck you as downright eerie. The worst part was that he was standing between you and the bedroom, and you wouldn't be able to grab your staff to defend yourself if he attacked. Unless you could get past him. Suddenly, something dawns on you, and you can't believe it didn't occur to you before. LN2829? His head snaps up immediately, like it was a programmed response. You can feel your heart thumping in your chest. You try to speak, but your tongue is suddenly too big for your mouth, and you have trouble forming his name. Ladson? Slowly, the stormtrooper reaches up to take off his helmet, and as he removed it from his head and lowered it to the floor beside you, you were struck by one of the most disturbing sights in the entire galaxy. Ladson was crying in earnest now, holding nothing back. His face was bright red, his cheeks shone with tears, and his bottom lip quivered dramatically as he tried to hold himself together. "Ladson," you whisper softly. He lunges himself at you, and you don't even have time to react as he pushes you back into the couch, burying his face in your lap. You sit there stiffly for a moment before you put a hand in his hair. His curly locks were all but shaved off, leaving a stiff military crew cut in its place. You want to try to comfort him, to tell him that it will all be okay, but you don't know that it will be when you don't even know what he's been through. "You're alive!" he bawls into your lap, and you let out a shaky sigh of relief. "Of course I'm alive," you say as lightly as possible. "Please, you think someone like Kylo Ren could get the better of me? You've sparred with me. I'm unstoppable." He just shakes his head and continues to sob, and you let him get it all out. You honestly had no idea what he had been through over the past few weeks, and you didn't want to push him. This was probably the first time he cried like this, you realize, and although his hysterics made you very, very uncomfortable, you tried your best not to let it show, especially when it looked like he needed you more than ever right now. Unfortunately, your stomach decided that you had had enough and murmured a low, angry growl. "Sorry," you say quickly, but he gets to his feet and gestures for you to go ahead. You quickly get up and grab your plate of food, watching him collapse on the couch. You don't know what to say, and so you eat quietly, never taking your eyes off of him. He's sitting with his head in his hands, and you think his eyes are closed, but you're not sure. Every now and then you can hear a sniffle or a sharp intake of breath as he tries to pull himself together. "I saw you in the hallway," Ladson says at last, "when Kylo Ren was carrying you, after you had been locked in that cell all week. I didn't know about it at the time. If I had, I would have rescued you. I would have saved you. You just looked," he shakes his head, "and you smelled like death, and—" "Okay," you say quickly, holding up your hand to stop him. You had absolutely no desire to replay that insufferable week in your mind. As far as that was concerned, you refused to think about it. No, instead, you would let it fester quietly in the back of your brain where you would never have to dwell on it ever again. "Well, at least it's nice to know we have a good sense of camaraderie going. You felt guilty for not saving me, and I felt guilty for not saving Sadie sooner." "Sadie?" Ladson looks up to you, and all color drains from his face. "Sadie? She's here? She's okay," you tell him. "Hux was keeping her prisoner as his own personal—" You struggle with the word. "Slave. But it's okay now. Kylo got her out. He sent her home." He stares at you like he can't quite believe what he's hearing. "Kylo Ren sent Sadie home." You look to the left and then to the right, and you're not quite sure what he didn't understand. "Yes." He stares at you like he's not quite sure what to believe. "You expect me to believe that monster—" "Whoa," you say quickly, holding up your hands. "I don't tolerate Kylo Ren hate. Not in this room. Not in this apartment." He shakes at you. He stares at you incredulously as he gets to his feet. I know you don't know this, but B was... Yeah, I know. Kylo Ren went whoosh. You mimic the motion of cutting B in half with an invisible lightsaber. Ladson stares at you like you've absolutely lost your mind, and you look down as you grin sheepishly. You gather yourself together before you look up at him again. B used me. You know that. You heard it himself. But it was for the greater good, Ladson says weakly, and you can tell that this was something he had been struggling with for a while. Not the way I see it, you tell him. I've never worked for the Resistance. I had no say in it. If they'd asked me, it would be different, but... You let your shoulders drop. They didn't. It is what it is. I'm here with Kylo now, and that's all there is to it. Ladson sighs as if he's not quite sure what to say. With Kylo, he asks you? So what does that mean exactly? You start to answer, but he holds up his hand to stop you. You have it bad for him, don't you? Maybe you would have seen this coming if you believed me when I told you I was messing around with him the first time. You say teasingly, but seriously, Ladson, he's not a bad guy. Not around me, at least. That should count for something. And he did save Sadie. How, he asks. It's a fair question, but for some reason it irritates you. He did, you tell him. He got me up to Hux's room to see her when Hux was out. And then one day when Hux was distracted or something, he snuck in and got her out. He sent her on a ship back home. Ladson just stares at you down, like he's not quite sure he believes you. I haven't heard about any unscheduled departures lately. Well, of course you wouldn't hear about it, I retort. It's Kylo Ren. He tells someone to do something and it gets done. It wouldn't be unscheduled if he's the one who scheduled it. Ladson just shakes his head and sighs as he sits back down. I don't want to tell you this, but you've changed. Although that's probably not new information, and I can't really hold it against you. Yeah, you say bitterly. It looks like you've changed too. We've all changed, but I mean, whatever it takes to survive, right? He looks away from you and you try to change the topic. So, what have you been up to lately? Any fun stories you want to share? I'm not allowed to tell you anything, he says curtly. I'm allowed to stay here with you and make small talk, but I'm not allowed to tell you anything. They won't know, you start, but then quickly shake your head. They wouldn't know immediately, but Kylo certainly had ways of finding out. Okay, you're right. I won't push you. You sit in awkward silence for a few minutes, neither of you knowing what to say. Was there anything really to say? After what you had both been through, you weren't the same people who'd been drinking wine and laughing together just a few short weeks ago. It seemed like an eternity and a day had passed since that time. Maybe you couldn't be friends, not in the same way that you had been, but that didn't make you any less determined to protect him. That reminds me, I say idly, have you seen Shane around? Nope, Ladson replies simply. Doubt he's still on base. A flash of alarm crosses your features. Why? Did something happen? Ladson shakes his head. Of course something happened. It's Shane. Do you think anyone could put up with him for more than 5 minutes before taking a blaster to his skull? He looks at you for a moment and your chest puffs out in a voluntary exhale. It's a joke. He's trying to make a joke. You puff out a forced laugh and he cracks a grin, and suddenly you're both laughing. Strained, awkward laughter, but laughter nonetheless. Oh, fuck, you say, brushing your hair back out of your face. It's so good to see you again. Same here, he sighs. He leans back on the couch, putting his feet up. I haven't been in a position to ask questions, but is everyone else okay? I know they wanted me to interpret for Taro once, but his hands were cuffed to the table and they wouldn't release him, so I couldn't get too much out of him. He's dead, you say with all the frankness you can muster. Ladson looks over you and raises his eyebrows, waiting for your explanation. Blasted out of the sky, you tell him. He showed up here, tried to get me to escape with him, but I told him I was going to stay here and help find you guys. Guess it was a good thing I did, otherwise they'd still be wiping bits of my brain off the transparasteel. Ladson puffs out a breath. I'm sorry. I know you guys were close. He looks up at you again. Or do you hate him too, for everything? I don't hate him. You shake your head. I don't know why, but at least he tried to protect me by putting that shield in my head. You rub your face with one hand. I can't talk about this anymore. I'm sorry. Don't be, Ladson says firmly. It's a lot, I know. He hums to himself. So B is dead, C is dead, Tyro and the Torturer are dead, right? You nod your head silently. And Sadie is heading back home, and Shane is still missing? I think that about sums it up, you tell him. Should we go looking for him? I don't know, Ladson shrugs. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't. Nah, I'm stuck here, you tell him. I might be able to get out without Kylo here if you're escorting me, but... Nope, Ladson says, a little too loudly. No, I was warned you might want to take a stroll of the base. You are to stay here under close supervision. You can't help but laugh. It's like he doesn't trust me. He just shrugs. Not his orders. I think these came from Hux. Or Phasma. I mean, she... He shuts his mouth and closes his eyes. I know what you're trying to do, but please don't get me in any trouble. It was just a question, you tell him, shaking your head. Anyway, how am I going to get you out of here? Out of here? Ladson asks. You mean like escape? That's what it means, you tell him. He stares at you and pulls his feet off the couch. What are you playing at? Are you trying to get me killed? No, you say quickly. No, but if we can get you off this base before Kylo Ren comes back, then he doesn't need to know we even had this conversation. No, Ladson says quickly. I can't leave, and even if I could, I'm not going to just leave you here with him. He's not so bad, you tell him. Seriously, though, I need you to find Shane, and... Fuck Shane. Ladson crosses his arms over his chest and pouts. I never liked Shane to begin with, and with his mouth, he's probably already dead. It's at least worth looking into, you urge. No, it's really not, Ladson replies. I don't have a lot of free time to just wander the base, but I can tell you, it's a lot bigger than we originally thought. We've only seen one very small part of it, and he could be anywhere, if he's even still here. I mean, I've seen Hux's room, so I can believe it, you tell him. Ladson raises an eyebrow. I mean, it was like 2 stories tall in there. It was like a mini mansion. It was like entering an alternate galaxy or something. Yeah, well, Ladson shrugs. Look, I don't know about Shane, but I'm not sticking my neck out for him. You, on the other hand... He tilts his head to the side. But you're not going anywhere, and I'm not going anywhere, so the best we can do is look out for each other. You pouted him. Would you leave if I came with you? He just sighs and shakes his head. Is that even a question? You don't mean it. You hesitate. You know that Kylo would probably trace back through your thoughts, or his thoughts, later, but right now that seemed like a future problem, and Ladson needs to know that you care about him, now. For your safety, I would go. He just laughs and shakes his head. You're a terrible liar. It's a miracle you've survived this long. You just smile and shake your head. So are you a better fighter now, at least? Can you answer me that much? You really want to spar with me, he asks. I haven't any wine. Don't need it, you reply. I've been sparring with the great Kylo Ren. I could drop you where you stand. Really? Ladson asks. He's taking you on as his apprentice? You tilt your head to the side. There seems to be some sort of implication in the word, but you don't understand it. Apprentice? Apprentice for what? He breathes in through his nose and out through his mouth. Now that I'm in the inner circles, I found out that stormtroopers like to talk and gossip. He pauses. A lot. He fixes you with a steely gaze and you tug nervously at a strand of hair you'd been twining around your finger. Do I want to know what's said about me? You ask. Just that you're his inamorata, he shrugs. I mean, that's nothing I didn't know already, but they think that Ren really, likes you. Oh, really? You ask. And what evidence do they have of this? That you're not dead yet, Ladson says dryly. You shut your mouth and look away. Anyway, some of them think he's training you in the Force. Huh, you snort. I wish. Ladson looks at you nervously. You sure you should be messing around with the Force? He asks. I've heard a few things about this light side, dark side stuff, and... I want that power, you tell him. Apparently I have it inside of me already. I just need to figure out how to channel it. But I need it. I need it to help to protect you. And if I had it before, I could have protected Sadie. I don't know. Ladson shakes his head. I mean, I know your heart is in the right place, but I worry about you being trained, especially here. I worry about what they would use you for." "Kylo wouldn't use me for anything," you tell him indignantly. He looks away. "But the First Order, on the other hand, I don't know what they would do with me." "So, are we really doing this?" Ladson asks at length. You shake your head in confusion, waiting for him to continue. "So we're really going to stay here and work for the First Order?" "I don't know," you say with a careless shrug. "I mean, right now, I'm just sort of here. I'm not doing anything yet. Are you really going to stay and be a stormtrooper?" "I don't seem to have much of a choice," Ladson sighs. "And if you're staying here, then I'm not going anywhere." "And I'm not going anywhere if you're not going anywhere," you echo. "But what about Shane?" Ladson just shakes his head. "Fuck Shane." "No thanks," you say casually, brushing your hair off your shoulder. Ladson stares at you for a moment and lets out an incredulous snort. "Can you please take that armor off, though? If we're going to spar again, I don't want to break my hand." "Certainly," Ladson says as he stands up. This thing shapes like you won't believe." You gesture him to follow you into Kylo Ren's bedroom, and as he does so, it's clear he's nervous. This looks surprisingly normal for Ren's bedroom. I kind of imagined it would be like a chamber of death or something. "I mean, they probably didn't design this room with him in mind," you tell him. "He's not here much, anyway. He just comes back here at night to..." You roll your shoulders and let them drop. "I don't even want to picture it," Ladson says, shaking his head. "How could you, though? Really? Kylo Ren? All the times you told me it was him, and I just never thought..." "Have you seen him without his helmet?" you ask him. "No," he says, "but I'm guessing he doesn't have tentacles then?" You grin and shake your head. You had completely forgotten the first time you and Ladson had encountered Kylo Ren. You were afraid that he was concealing tentacles underneath that helmet of his. You couldn't believe that you had forgotten that, or that Ladson had remembered it, but it did bring another memory to mind. "You were looking after me from day one," you remind him. "Thanks for that." "What are friends for?" he asks, widening his stance. "Okay, if we're going to do this, let's do this, because I feel really uncomfortable standing in Kylo Ren's bedroom." "Then let's do this," you say, throwing your leg back in a deeper lunge than you had been able to do the last time you sparred with him. "Well, what are we doing?" "Fighting?" "Well, what kind of fighting?" Ladson asks as he shakes his head. "Seriously, this again?" You smirk, remembering the conversation well. "How'd you want me to hit you? Fist? Open hand? Backhand?" "I don't know. Should I be scared of you?" "Definitely."